Convoy to ADX Florence. Inside the transport of America's most dangerous inmate. Don't blink, you're about to ride shotgun on the most dangerous prisoner transfer in America. Subscribe, like, and stay with us until the end. The convoy rolled out of the dimly lit hangar just before dawn, engines low and throaty like caged animals. Rain misted across the tarmac at Westchester County Airport, turning the black SUVs into glistening shadows. Federal Marshals, DEA agents, and Bureau of Prisons tactical officers moved in tight choreography, helmets, ballistic vests, radios pressed to their mouth. Each one knew this was not a routine prisoner run. This was the kind of move where one misstep could end in bloodshed, escape, or an international incident. Inside the armored van at the center sat a man whose name alone had filled newspapers for years. The indictment read like a war ledger: multiple murders, trafficking on a continental scale, entire communities destabilized. His face was expressionless behind the narrow slit of a restraint mask. Shackles clinked against the steel bench with each bump in the road. Federal records would never say exactly where he boarded this transport, officials call it undisclosed, but agents on the ground knew the destination: ADX Florence, the Alcatraz of the Rockies, America's most secure Supermax prison. The route had been planned for weeks, updated every hour. Decoy convoys had been sent out of 2 other airports. Drones from a counter-surveillance team swept nearby overpasses for unusual heat signatures. Highway patrol blocked on-ramps 3 miles ahead and 3 miles behind. Even the pilots of the support helicopters were briefed under sealed orders. Think of it like moving a live nuclear device, one ICE supervisor muttered to a colleague, his breath fogging in the cold. If it goes off, everyone feels it. At mile marker 42 on the interstate, the lead SUV slowed. A plain white box truck had drifted into the lane, hazard lights flashing. Inside the command vehicle, a marshal's eyes flicked to the dash camera. "That wasn't on the route sheet," he said, voice tightening. The convoy's radios erupted with coded chatter. The box truck's rear doors trembled once, twice. Rain hissed louder on the bullet-resistant glass. For an instant, the prisoner inside the armored van raised his eyes and stared at the door as if he knew something was about to happen. Weeks earlier, federal planners had circulated intelligence briefings. Unconfirmed chatter on encrypted apps suggested that associates of the inmate were desperate to prevent his arrival at ADX Florence. Speculated plots included ambushing a convoy, corrupting an insider, even hijacking the prisoner midair. No one knew how real the threats were, but no one was taking chances. That was why this convoy moved like a rolling fortress. Multiple agencies, multiple layers of secrecy, no stops until Colorado. The box truck ahead jolted forward, its hazard lights blinking off. For a heartbeat, every driver in the convoy braced. Then the truck veered onto the shoulder, tires spitting water, and came to a stop. Clear, crackled a voice over the encrypted channel. Engines roared again. The convoy picked up speed, tires slicing through the wet asphalt. But the moment left a chill hanging in the air. Someone, somewhere, knew the route or was testing them. By the time the sun broke through the storm, the line of vehicles had crossed into Pennsylvania. Helicopters shadowed them at staggered intervals, rotors chopping the damp morning. In the armored van, the prisoner sat perfectly still, wrists cuffed to a belly chain, ankles shackled to the floor. He had made his reputation by slipping out of impossible places: underground tunnels, fortified jails, even maximum security lockups in his home country. But this was different. This was ADX Florence, a fortress built after deadly incidents at USP Marion in the 1980s. No one had ever escaped. In a windowless control room back in Washington, a map tracked the convoy's progress, each vehicle a blinking dot. Analysts scrolled through feeds from roadside cameras, monitoring every intersection. "We're good so far," one said. "No chatter since the box truck." Another analyst frowned. Yeah, but the decoy convoys haven't checked in. Silence hung heavy. The screen showed 3 blinking dots, 2 heading south, 1 heading west. Only one was real. As the convoy approached a toll plaza on the Ohio Turnpike, a new transmission cut through the secure channel. Possible compromise. Repeat, possible compromise. The message died into static. A marshal glanced at the prisoner's profile. For the first time all morning, he saw a flicker of something, maybe amusement, in the man's eyes. The lead SUV accelerated, siren lights snapping on. The entire convoy surged forward, skipping the toll, barriers shattering as they blew through. Behind them, the box truck from earlier pulled back onto the highway, merging several cars behind. Its driver wore sunglasses despite the gray sky. Inside its cargo bay, according to later reports, lay equipment no one was supposed to have. Whether it was coincidence or the first sign of a larger plot, no one in the convoy could yet know. But the move to ADX Florence was already becoming one of the most nerve-wracking transfers in federal history. And by the time they reached Colorado, a shocking discovery would upend everything the Marshals thought they knew about their own operation. The longest road. Rain slicked off the highway like oil as the convoy pushed deeper into the Midwest. The box truck had dropped out of sight somewhere near Toledo, but the sense of being watched clung to every agent like a wet shirt. In the command SUV, Marshal Vega kept one hand on the radio, the other hovering over the dashboard Glock mount. His phone vibrated again, another secure text with a single word: Ghost. No one was supposed to know that code. It was reserved for high-risk, high-value transfers when there was evidence of an insider leak. Vega scanned the faces in his rearview mirror. His co-driver, an ICE agent named Kruger, stared straight ahead, jaw tight. In the rear compartment, 2 more marshals sat with rifles angled low. Even inside the convoy, trust was starting to fray. Behind them, the armored van throbbed with the muted roar of the prisoners' chains. The man's head was slightly bowed now, eyes fixed on the floor, but his breathing had changed, slower, deeper, like someone listening for footsteps. The name, ADX Florence, still meant something even to him. The Supermax wasn't just a prison, it was the end of the line. If the convoy made it to Colorado, the world he knew would shrink to a 7 by 12-foot cell and a 4-inch slit of sky. 3 states away, in a windowless fusion center outside Denver, analysts monitored live feeds from drones, highway cameras, and undercover support vehicles. One of them, a young FBI tech named Arlene Sanchez, leaned closer to her screen. "Something's off," she whispered. An unmarked black SUV had been tailing the convoy for 60 miles, keeping a steady distance just beyond the helicopter's camera arc. She flagged it, typed a warning into the channel. The message blinked red on Vega's dashboard just as the toll plaza lights vanished in the side mirrors. "Eyes up," Vega muttered into the radio. "We're not alone." The convoy accelerated again, swinging off the interstate onto a service road normally closed to public traffic. Decoys ahead blocked intersections. A state police cruiser pulled across a farm entrance. Through the drizzle, bare corn stalks rose like bayonet. This route had been chosen for its isolation, now it felt like a funnel. Inside the armored van, the prisoner's lips curled almost imperceptibly. Marshals had been instructed never to speak to him, never to use his name. But he had ears, and he'd caught fragments of their chatter over the radio. Someone had breached the plan. Someone outside, or inside, was trying to change his fate before they reached ADX Florence. Vega's radio crackled. Black SUV just turned off. Taking the old mill road. A beat later another voice came through, harsh and static-filled. "Decoy convoy Delta compromised, no response from team." Silence. The only sound was the rain hammering the windshield and the prisoner's chains clinking softly with each bump. Marshal Vega tapped his co-driver. "We've got to make a decision," he said under his breath. "We stick to Route C, or we go dark now." Kruger hesitated, eyes flicking to the GPS. The alternate route wound through a stretch of forest roads with no cell coverage, perfect for losing a tail, but also perfect for an ambush. We can't risk a blockade, Kruger said. If they're ahead of us, we're dead in the water. A burst of coded static erupted from the radio, a prearranged signal. The lead SUV's brake lights flashed twice, then once. The entire convoy swung abruptly onto a narrow county lane, tires spitting gravel. Helicopters banked hard to follow, rotors chopping low over the trees. Ahead, the road curved into a tunnel of pines, their branches dripping like black knives. Back in Denver, Sanchez watched the convoy's GPS icons flicker. "They're going dark," she whispered. She hit a red button marked panic, triggering a wider alert to nearby unit. If the convoy lost contact, protocols said to scramble quick reaction forces to intercept, but by then it might already be too late. Inside the van, the prisoner shifted his shackled hands, testing the steel. Marshals didn't notice. Their eyes were on the windows, scanning the tree line. A thin smile ghosted across his face. According to unconfirmed reports later cited in court filings, he had managed to memorize parts of the transport schedule through a corrupt contact months earlier. How much he knew about today's plan would never be proven, but at that moment, as the convoy slipped off the grid, he seemed to know something they did not. A mile into the forest road, the lead SUV slowed again. Ahead, a single orange cone stood in the center of the lane. No sign of construction, no workers, just the cone and an empty stretch of wet pavement. Vega cursed under his breath. "This is bad," he said into his mic, "this is very bad." The convoy halted. Rain ticked on metal roof. Helicopter blades thundered overhead. In the distance, a crow called once, sharp and lonely. Then, from somewhere deep in the trees, a low rumble began, an engine or something heavier. Every marshal raised their weapon. Kruger flicked off the van's safety latch. Behind them, the prisoner tilted his head, listening. His eyes glinted through the restraint mask like chips of dark glass. Whatever was coming, it was the moment he had been waiting for. And just as Vega opened his mouth to order a retreat, a voice he'd never heard before came over the encrypted channel, calm, confident, and terrifyingly close. "Marshal Vega. You have something of ours. Pull over." The roadblock, the voice on the encrypted channel, was like ice water poured into Vega's ear. "Marshal Vega. You have something of ours. Pull over." No one outside his immediate team should even know his name, let alone the channel frequency. Inside the lead SUV, every agent froze. Kruger's hands tightened on the wheel until his knuckles went white. "How the hell do they know who you are?" he whispered. Vega didn't answer. His eyes scanned the tree line, the mirrors, the GPS. The blinking dots that had tracked the convoy a moment ago had vanished from the screen. They were completely off the grid now. No backup, no comms, no official record of where they were. The orange cone ahead seemed absurd in the rain, a single bright mark in a dark tunnel of pines. Then another appeared 30 feet beyond it. And another. Like breadcrumbs leading deeper into a trap. Rain beaded on the windshields, distorting the cones into bleeding orange shape. Somewhere out in the trees, that low rumble continued, closer now, like a diesel engine idling under heavy load. Eyes on the prisoner, Vega barked into the mic, "We're not pulling over." His voice came out harder than he felt. In the armored van, the shackled man sat completely still, head bowed, but Vega swore he saw the faintest hint of a smile under the mask. Kruger flicked a switch, activating the van's internal feed. Grainy black and white footage flickered on the dash monitor. The prisoner's hands, the chain, the mask, the unmoving body. "If they try to hit us here, they'll go for him first," Kruger muttered. The voice came again, this time softer, almost friendly. "Last chance, Marshal. We don't want to spill blood." Static hissed. Then silence. Without warning, 2 black pickup trucks shot out from the trees ahead, mud spraying from their tires. They swung sideways, blocking the narrow lane, their doors marked with nothing but peeling white paint. Men in dark jackets jumped out, faces hidden behind scarves, weapons cradled low. No badges, no insignia. Not highwaymen, not police. Something else. Vega's hand hovered over the siren switch. "Weapons up," he ordered. Inside the van, the marshals raised their rifles, sights on the tree line. Helicopter rotors thundered overhead, but the dense canopy broke the pilot's line of sight. The convoy was effectively blind. Kruger whispered, "We can ram them." Vega shook his head. "We don't know how many there are. We don't know the back road exits. We ram and we could be boxed in from behind." Behind them, the prisoner shifted, the chains rattling softly. According to later sworn statements, he never spoke a word during the standoff. But his eyes were alive now, flicking between the marshals, the trucks, the forest, calculating. Then, in a move no one expected, the back doors of one of the pickup trucks swung open and a woman stepped out. She was unarmed, hands raised, coat soaked by the rain. She wore a Bureau of Prisons ID badge on a lanyard around her neck. "Vega," she shouted over the storm. "You're compromised. They're inside your team." Every agent looked at each other. Inside the armored van, one of the marshals shifted uneasily, his finger sliding off the trigger. "She's bluffing," Kruger hissed. Nobody could have breached this detail. But Vega's mind flashed back to the secure text, "Ghost." The unmarked black SUV tailing them. The decoy convoys falling silent. Someone had been feeding information. And now a woman with an official ID was standing in front of a roadblock, demanding the prisoner back. "Marshal Vega," she yelled again. "Your lead driver isn't who you think he is." At that moment, in the lead SUV, the driver, a state trooper assigned at the last minute, turned his head slightly. For the first time all day, Vega noticed a faint tattoo peeking from under the man's glove, a design he had seen in intelligence photos of the prisoner's cartel. His stomach dropped. He reached for his radio to signal an emergency extraction. But before he could speak, the trooper slammed his foot on the brake, locking the convoy in place. In the armored van, the shackled prisoner closed his eyes and exhaled slowly, as if some invisible clock had finally reached zero. And through the pounding rain, over the helicopter blades and the agents shouting, the low rumble from the forest rose to a roar. An engine, a gate, something huge moving closer, until the sound filled the whole road like thunder. The brake. Rain hammered down so hard it blurred the tree line into a green-black smear. The convoy sat frozen, hemmed in by the blocked road ahead and the dark pines on either side. Helicopters circled but couldn't see through the canopy. Inside the command SUV, Vega's heartbeat thudded against his vest. The tattoo on the trooper's wrist was no longer a rumor, it was staring back at him like a brand. "Hands where I can see them," Vega barked. The trooper didn't move. Kruger angled his rifle, voice sharp. "Now!" Outside, the woman with the bureau badge shouted again, "Marshal Vega, you're compromised. Move the prisoner now or you'll lose him." Vega's radio erupted in overlapping code. Static, then a burst of a male voice. "Package transfer in 60 seconds. It wasn't one of his team. Whoever had breached them was inside their frequency. In the armored van, the shackled man's breathing deepened. His head tilted up, eyes locked on the windshield. According to later unconfirmed reports, he had memorized contingency escape plans years before. Whether this was one of them, no one could prove. But in that moment, he looked like someone waiting for a door to open. Vega drew his sidearm, pressed it against the trooper's ribs. "You're done," he hissed. The trooper's eyes flicked toward the van. A tiny smile curled at his mouth. "Too late," he whispered. Then it began. From the trees, two black ATVs burst onto the road, mud spraying like shrapnel. Riders in tactical gear leapt off, tossing smoke canisters that hissed and rolled under the SUVs. White fog blossomed instantly, swallowing the convoy. Visibility dropped to nothing. Agents shouted. Metal doors slammed. A flashbang cracked like thunder, turning the forest road into a war zone. Inside the van, one marshal yanked the prisoner back by his chain while another fumbled for the emergency lock. "Stay down," someone yelled. The shackled man didn't flinch. He sat perfectly still as the smoke seeped under the door, eyes unblinking. Vega's training kicked in. "Fall back, Delta!" he roared into his mic, coughing on the smoke. Kruger hit a hidden switch on the dash. Sirens inside the vehicles began a shrill, rising wail, the code for QRF extraction. Even without GPS, the helicopters above would know to drop countermeasures and vector in backup. But before backup could arrive, a black pickup smashed through the roadside brush behind them, ramming the last SUV. Glass shattered. An agent screamed. The convoy was boxed in. Vega shoved the fake trooper out of the driver's seat and floored the accelerator. The command SUV lurched forward, bumper slamming into the first cone, then the second, plowing a narrow gap between the two black pickups. "Go, go, go!" Kruger yelled. Bullets cracked through the smoke, punching into the armored panels. Sparks danced across the hood. Behind them, the armored van's driver slammed into gear and followed, tires squealing. The prisoner rocked in his seat as the van jolted forward. Chains rattled like a warning bell. Through the fog, Vega glimpsed the woman with the badge diving into the trees. Whether she was part of the ambush or trying to warn him, he'd never know. He only knew one thing: get the convoy moving or lose the package. The SUVs roared out of the smoke, mud and pine needles spattering the windshield. Ahead, the forest road curved sharply left toward an old steel bridge spanning a chasm. The rain made the planks slick as ice. Vega gunned the engine anyway. Behind them, the black pickups revved to follow. Kruger glanced back. "They're not trying to kill us," he shouted over the engine. "They're trying to force a stop." "They're not getting it," Vega snapped. He keyed his radio. "Helicopter 1, you're cleared to engage." Above the trees, a helicopter banked hard, side door sliding open, Federal sharpshooter leaning out. The first black pickup skidded on the wet road as tracer rounds cracked the dirt in front of its tires. It swerved, slammed into a tree, and erupted in steam. But the second pickup kept coming, ramming the rear of the armored van again and again. Inside, the prisoner's mask tilted slightly, eyes bright. His chains rattled with each impact, like an impatient metronome counting down to 0. Vega slammed onto the bridge, the steel grating singing under the tires. Wind tore at the convoy, carrying the smell of wet metal and pine. He saw open highway on the other side, freedom if they could just make it. Then Kruger's radio hissed one last time. A man's voice, low and satisfied: "The bridge won't hold." Before Vega could ask what that meant, a dull boom echoed up from below the planks, a tremor running through the bridge like a pulse. The steering wheel jerked in his hands. The armored van behind them fishtailed, skidding sideways on the wet grating. Chains clattered. Sirens wailed. Helicopter rotors roared. And as the convoy hurtled across the trembling steel, the shackled man inside the van finally looked up at the sky through the narrow window and smiled. The last mile. The boom rolled under the bridge like thunder trapped in steel. Bolts rattled, water sprayed up from the river 30 feet below. Vega's hands locked on the wheel. "Hold it steady," Kruger yelled, bracing against the dash. Behind them, the armored van fishtailed again, tires screeching on wet grating, its massive weight dragging it toward the guardrail. Inside the van, the shackled man tilted his head as if listening to an old song. The restraints held, but his eyes gleamed. He had escaped tunnels, bribes, helicopters, but this was supposed to be the final cage. ADX Florence. One cell. One slot of sky. No more power, no more empire. Unless someone stopped it here. Vega jammed the accelerator. The command SUV leapt forward, skidding off the last plank and onto solid tarmac. Move, 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 he shouted into the mic. The armored van lurched after him. For a split second, the second black pickup was still on the bridge, its front end dented from ramming. The helicopter above banked hard and fired 2 warning shots across its hood. The pickup swerved, clipped a support beam, and spun out, slamming against the guardrail with a screech of metal. Kruger looked back. "We're clear," he yelled. But Vega saw the armored van swaying violently, the bridge's grating bending under its weight. "Not yet," Vega muttered. "Not yet." Inside the van, the prisoner leaned forward, chains tight, as the marshals shouted orders. One of them reached for the emergency release button, the fail-safe to dump restraints in case of a crash. Vega's voice cracked through the radio, "Do not touch that button." But the signal drowned in static. The marshals couldn't hear. The van hit the last plank. A hollow clang rang through the steel like a church bell. The guardrail tore loose, sparks and splinters flying. For an instant, it looked like the whole van would slide sideways into the river. Then the driver gunned the engine, tires clawing for purchase, and the vehicle shot off the bridge just as a section of grating gave way behind it, crashing into the water below. The convoy was across. For a few heartbeats, everything was only rain and engine noise. The black pickups were trapped on the far side. The helicopters hovered above like giant hawks. The road ahead stretched clear and empty, a straight shot to the interstate and then Colorado. Vega exhaled for the first time in an hour. "We've got him," he said. But inside the van, the marshals were staring at something else. During the chaos, one of the restraint locks had snapped. The prisoner's left hand was free. He sat perfectly still, the loose cuff dangling from his wrist like a broken promise. His eyes met the nearest marshal's. "Drive," he said quietly. In an instant, rifles swung up. "Don't move," a marshal barked. The prisoner smiled faintly. "Too late," he said. Vega's radio burst to life again, this time with a female voice. "Sanchez from Denver. We've tracked the breach. The pickup team was hired. No one on your convoy flip. But the prisoner may have an asset inside the van. Lock it down now." Vega hit the emergency interlock. Heavy bolts slammed shut between the driver's cab and the prisoner's compartment. Gas nozzles hidden in the ceiling hissed, filling the back with a dense, clear mist, a non-lethal suppressant designed for exactly this moment. The prisoner coughed once, eyes narrowing. He pressed his free hand against the steel wall, but the chains on his legs kept him pinned. His empire, his escape, his last chance, evaporating in cold mist. By the time the convoy reached a fortified transfer station outside Florence, the marshals were soaked, bruised, and silent. They opened the van under floodlights. The prisoner sat slumped, still shackled at the ankles, mask wet with condensation. His free hand was limp, his eyes furious but clear. He had not escaped. 2 hours later, under even heavier security, he was moved through a series of sally ports into ADX Florence. The gates clanged shut one after another, steel swallowing him whole. A single cell waited, 7 feet wide, 12 feet long, 1 concrete bed, 1 steel sink, 1 narrow slit of sky. 23 hours a day. No phones, no visitors without glass. The end of the line. In Washington, Vega stood in a debriefing room staring at a grainy still from the helicopter's footage. The convoy on the bridge, the pickup trucks in the rain, the prisoner's masked face turned toward the window. "How close was it?" a supervisor asked. Vega didn't answer. He just thought about the voice on the radio, the tattoo on the trooper's wrist, the woman with the badge. The case was over, but the leak wasn't closed. Outside ADX Florence, the wind rolled off the Rockies, rattling the razor wire like a warning bell. Inside, the prisoner sat on his bunk and stared at the slot of sky. For the first time in years, he had no plan. And on the screen you're watching now, a caption fades in over that image. If you thought this story was intense, you're not ready for the next one. Subscribe so you don't miss it.